I missed a day at my new job. I had to borrow $400, and the old rust bucket got impounded today because of one really stupid mistake. What had happened was, when I was unemployed and not able to find work there for a while, everything got really tight money-wise, and my old truck wasn't running good, and so I wasn't using it. I put my insurance, my auto insurance, on pause. And then when I was working at the city job, I was just mostly riding the motorcycle, taking the train, and I would only take the truck when the weather was bad. And so I figured, I kept thinking, okay, when my financial situation improves, I'll get the insurance going. And so then things were improving, and I was like, okay, I'll take my insurance off pause. So one night I went on to the website, and it was a kind of like maybe a failure to do enough adulting or being responsible enough, but I tried one night to do it myself. I went to the State Farm, website into my account, and I thought, well, maybe I could just turn it from pause to let's go again. And but I couldn't figure out how to do it, and so I got frustrated, and I just quit doing it. And I was like, I'm gonna have to call him or something. And then I just kind of kept blowing it off, or putting it off, or procrastinating. And so then what happened was, this morning I went early to the grocery store to get ice for my cooler and some water for work. And well, anyway, I pulled out of the grocery store, and there's like two entrances, and I pulled out of this first entrance and started to head this direction, and then I saw police pull up to that other entrance right in front of me, basically. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I was still thinking like probable cause or something, and in one part of me, I was like, I don't have insurance. But I didn't really worry about it because it's like not like I'm speeding or anything. So I got maybe just halfway past the entrance, well, maybe all the way past, and the cop was pulling out. The cop was actually going to go for this other lane, I could tell. But as soon as she got maybe to the halfway point of my truck, she froze. Her car froze. And I was like, oh boy, that is not good. And I know now what happened was, she had like one of those camera scanner type things on her car, and it alerted to my license plate that it was a vehicle without active insurance. She didn't tell me that, but I could just tell kind of by what happened. If it had just been her, she would have just drove on out. But the computer, the AI, the whatever, picked me up and made her screen light up in some way, I'm sure. And then I was like, oh boy, because I could tell the light. I was at a red light with a couple cars in front of me, and she was like half past me, half kind of just right behind me still. And another car had pulled up, and because I kept expecting her maybe to come by me on this side, but I realized that she wasn't. And I was like, oh man, this is not good. So then the light turned green, and then sure enough, as soon as I started to move, bam, the red and blues were like flashing in the back. And I was like, oh damn. And then I was like, I kind of knew it had to be about the insurance. And I've had run-ins with the police in the past, and I've ran from them. I've gotten pepper sprayed and beat up by them, but this was a long time ago. But still, I get like this post-traumatic stress type response to police, and my heart starts pounding, and I start freaking out. But I didn't really this morning, and I hadn't been drinking. I didn't have any weed or like a pipe in the car, or a roach in the ashtray or nothing like that, because I've been on the straight and narrow for a while. And so I was kind of felt remarkably calm. And right away, I just kind of had this feeling of I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm just going to accept this sort of horrible reality that's happening right now. And I also had been watching lately a lot of police interaction videos. And it doesn't do any good to fight with them or anything, and so I just figured, I'm just gonna surrender in all ways, just physically, spiritually, emotionally, whatever's happening here. I'm not gonna be able to change it, so I pulled in this church parking lot, which was the first parking lot that I could. I put on my signal and pulled in there, and I was still feeling kind of optimistic. I was like, well, if I'm nice and respectful, maybe this won't be too bad, And then I saw like a really pretty good looking police officer get out of the car. Her name was Alexis. Let me see, what was her name? Alexis Miguel Benson. And the only thing that was a little concerning was her hair was pulled back so tight. I felt like pulled back so tight it had to make her like strict, That sort of strictness that only comes with having your hair pulled back that tight. And she said to me, the state of Utah has alerted that this vehicle does not have insurance. Something along those lines. Now, in the past, I always thought, like, to get pulled over, I would have to be speeding or run a red light, or it would be one of those probable cause type situations and then I thought, as little as I was driving the old truck and the way I just putz around in it, I mean, usually if the speed limit is 35, I'm doing 30 because I feel every bump and pothole, everything shakes in here. And so I just, in my head, even though I knew it wasn't okay to be going without the insurance, I just thought, well, if I take it easy and everything, that I'd be pretty safe, And then the other thing was, I have tomorrow off because it's Pioneer Day here in Utah, and I had told myself, oh yeah, I need to take care of that insurance thing, which it was really more just about the rigmarole of making the phone call, and because now I had enough money to do it. It was just that I had to follow through with calling State Farm and, doing whatever I had to do there. And, okay, but anyways, well, it turns out that, nowadays with the cameras and the AI and everything, that just that alert will give them probable cause to pull you over. Like, basically, they know you don't have insurance. Doesn't matter if you're doing anything wrong. It's not like they gotta, So I rolled down my window and she came up beside me and she had told me that. Well, first I said good morning to her and she said good morning and she smiled, which I thought for a moment, like, oh, this isn't gonna be too bad. And then she said, I need to see proof of insurance. And I just said, I don't have insurance. And she said, well, let me see your driver's license. So I gave her my driver's license and she went back to the car. And then I was sitting there and then it was all kind of coming down on me. I was just like, oh no. And I was getting like that nervous kind of heart pounding, maybe adrenaline rushy type of feeling a little bit, and but I still, reality of what was going to happen, I didn't really get, Anyway, then another cop car pulls up, and then that's when I got worried. I was like, well, why is she needing another unit here, And it was a guy, and then he talked to her for just a second, and he came up and he said, I'm just going to be straight with you. We're going to tow and impound your truck. And I had all my work tools in here, and I was like maybe 10 minutes away from work. And so I was like, oh, well, what am I going to do with all my tools? And in my head, I was still going to be able to go to work. And I thought, oh, it's going to be a bummer to go to work and, have this situation going on, be hard to concentrate and everything. But I still wasn't getting the whole picture, kind of. And so, anyway, so I called one of my coworkers, which, by the way, my new coworkers are really cool, and then this really reaffirmed that how cool these guys are. I just called this one guy and I was like, "Hey man, I'm in big trouble. I got pulled over for no insurance and they're going to impound my truck." I said, "Is there any way you can come and get me and I could throw my tools in your truck?" And he was like, "Yeah, no problem, And so then he came, and the cop, she was just in her car most of the time, and I asked the guy if I could get out and start getting my tools out and put them in a pile, and he was like, "Well, I'll ask her." And then he went and asked her and came back and he said, "Yeah, you can." So I actually had quite a few things in here, like a compressor and nail guns and screw guns and bags of tools and little boxes of tools. And I was afraid it might get impounded, and then somehow I might not get the truck back, and then I might not have access to my tools. So in my head, I was like, I better get everything out, because, I've heard about bad stuff happening at the tow places where things disappear and stuff too. So, and then plus I was confused. At that point, I started to get really confused. I was like, now what, Anyway, so I got all my stuff out, and then here she comes with her orange rubber gloves and to search my car, do an inventory. And at that time, I remember I was just glad because I knew that I didn't have any paraphernalia. Like if she had stopped me a year ago at that same time, I would have been doing a cannabis vape and had the cab all smelled up with cannabis vape smoke, and that vape would have been in there, and there probably would have been a dirty pipe somewhere in here, a weed pipe, and so I would have gotten some paraphernalia charges and other stuff. But so there's like a weird sense of it was kind of comforting and calming to know that I didn't have there was no further trouble to be found, and so then she goes back to her car, and then she comes with the paperwork, and she presents me with a vehicle impound report. And it's kind of funny because there's a couple things where like about property inside it, and I had this old towel in here, and so a towel was the one piece of property that she put down, and then it says visible damage, meaning on the truck, and it just said scratches all over, which I thought was kind of funny. I guess she was just going through the motions of filling out the form, And so then, my friend from work shows up, and we load up all my tools in his vehicle. Oh, wait, then I forgot the other one. So then she gives me and she said, "And then I'm ticketing you." I think she said ticketing you for operating a vehicle without insurance. And then when I was standing there, I looked around for a price because I was thinking, well, how much is this going to cost me? And there was no price, but because and like the more everything was going on, the more confused I was actually too. I was like, I don't know, because I was still thinking I'm going to go to work and blah, blah, blah. And so then she has me sign the paperwork. And then I had been like super nice to him. And in fact, when I left, I almost was going to say, "Well, thank you guys. See you later." But then I left out the thank you, and I just said "see you later" because it just felt like I didn't want to thank him for the situation. And why should I, And I guess if I was thankful about anything, it's just that they didn't make my life even more miserable by, I don't know, she didn't ask me like, where are you going, where are you coming from, where you been, have you had any, alcohol today, or because I've had that happen where it's a routine stop and you think you're done, and they do this thing where like they give your ID back and then they'll ask you some more questions. It's like one of their techniques or strategies. So, okay. So then I was like, oh man, okay. I thought, oh, okay. So then I went to work with my coworker, And then he was like, well, what are you going to do? You going to try to work today, or are you going to go get your truck? And that was the other thing too. When I saw the guy loading the truck up, that was hard for me. And it was partly hard because I expected him to winch it up, but he didn't. He started it, and then he drove it up on that inclined ramp. And then the emergency brake doesn't work, and it's got an automatic transmission, and everything's old. So I know that he had to put it in park, and then it had to hang on this whatever grabs in there, some kind of a gear, which I think it's actually not a very big gear. So the entire weight of the truck was hanging on the transmission gearing, which like bothered me. I was like, man, that sucks, you know. And then I just thought, well, how's he when he gets it off? Even when I'm in a small slope and I got to go from park to reverse, it'll be like clunk, you know, because it's kind of, so I'm always real careful about not moving it or even like parking it or how I park it, because I don't want that pressure on the transmission. And he put it through like probably the most extreme transmission situation that old Betsy could be involved in. So that bothered me, and I kept playing that back in my mind later. That and the blue and red lights when they first came on. And so then I told my friend at work, I was like, well, what are we doing today? Just kind of show me what we're doing. It'll kind of maybe get my mind off of what just happened. I said, I feel real confused right now. And then so we went, and we were supposed to hang some doors and do some trim, like some casing and baseboard and stuff. And I had actually been looking forward to doing it, and was all tooled up for it and everything too, and my cooler was all stocked with drinks and my lunch and everything. And so then I was like, well, I know that if the truck stays at the impound if it stays there overnight, I think they whack you with a whole nother charge the next day. And so I started, because at first I was like, well, I gotta get my truck back over the next couple days, was kind of my thinking. And then all of a sudden I realized, like, oh God, I gotta get it back today somehow. So then I called the impound lot and asked him what I needed. And then he said I needed a report from the motor vehicle place. No, I needed a thing called an impound release. And then to get the impound release, I needed insurance. And so then that set off this, like, all of a sudden I had to be in like super adulty mode. I was like, I had to call State Farm, which it's weird how hard it is to find a number to call an actual person, you know. And I'd forgotten who my agent was, all that kind of stuff. And then when I'm under a lot of stress, I have a hard time thinking clearly sometimes too. Well, maybe I always have a hard time thinking clearly. But so then even that part, you know, like I had to give them some info. Then they said they were going to give me a quote, but it wasn't right away. They were going to text it to me. And I didn't know if they meant in the next hour, half hour, or today, like what, you know. But I started that process, and then I realized that I can't work. I'm going to have to just drop everything and go to do this. And I was like, well, oh, and then for that impound release, I also needed my title, and the title was back at the camper. So I was like, oh man, somehow I got to go back home, get that paperwork, and then on top of everything else, my bank account was empty. I think I only had $85. And then the tow truck guy told me it was going to be $360. And I was like, oh man. And then so I had to call the guy I'm doing the tile job for and ask him if he could loan me $400, which was hard. And plus he had been out of money, so that's why I hadn't been working on it. And but he had told me he wanted me to come up this weekend and work on it. And so I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. There was so much happened today. It was like such a stressful, extreme day. So he Venmo'd me the $400, and then I didn't think I had enough money to cover the insurance. So the lady I stay with, I had to borrow $100 from her, and then I had to get back home. So one of my I was going to take the bus from the job site, but then that same coworker said, was like, well, we already got all your tools in my truck. I should just run you home. So he was nice enough to bring me back home. We unloaded all my tools, and then I had to go in and find my title, which was hard because I had forgotten where I put it. I had to like dig through a bunch of paperwork and stuff, but I found it. Then I heard back from the Allstate guy, and he quoted me, and it was only $31, just $31 to get the insurance on my truck. And I knew it was like, before it was like, say, 45 or something, I thought. But, so anyway, so then I had the insurance. They sent me a digital copy of my proof of insurance stuff. So then I got on the motorbike. I hustled to the motor vehicle place, presented my paperwork there, and they gave me that report that I needed. And that was weird because it was free of charge. I thought there was going to be a whole nother thing there. And then even though there was a 2-hour wait for everybody else, for some reason, I think because I was impounded, she told me it'd just be 15 minutes. So I was like, oh, okay, things are looking a little better. And then they had told me that my truck, the cop told me and circled the thing on this card of where my truck was going to be impounded, and it was going to be in North Salt Lake, which is south quite a ways. So then after I got that report from the motor vehicle place, I drove to North Salt Lake to that impound lot, and my truck wasn't sitting there. And I was like, well, that's weird. But I thought maybe I couldn't see it, and I called the guy, and I was like, hey, I'm here at the lot, and there's no office or anything. He said, well, we'll send somebody over. And then I went and looked inside, and I didn't see my truck, so I called him back. I said, man, I feel like I'm at the wrong place. I said, I'm here at the North Salt Lake. He said, oh, well, your truck's in Clearfield. So they had sent me to the complete, and then the Clearfield one was like a half an hour away. So I was like, okay, because I had already expected troubles. Like, I kind of set my mind up for trouble at each part. I figured I wouldn't have the papers I needed in some way. I'd get turned away from here, or maybe the motor vehicle place. I just was like, okay, just expect lots of complications and problems, Brian. And so then I hauled ass on the motorbike down to, or up to Clearfield, went out there, called the guy, told him I was there, and he said, oh, well, that guy just went out to another deal. And then what I did was, there was nowhere to park the motorbike there. So I parked the motorbike at a restaurant that wasn't too far away, and I walked back. There was no shade, no chair, nothing. And I had to just sit and wait like a half an hour in the sun for this guy to pull in. And anyway, so then we went to do it. He was like, do you have the cash? And I was like, cash? I didn't know the guy needed cash. I was like, no, I don't. All I have is my debit card. And he was like, he called the office, and they were like, well, we'll do it, but it'll be a 3.5% upcharge. And then I was like, well, all right, that's like $13. And then I wasn't going to walk to the bank or whatever, or go get on the bike and go to the bank and then come back. And so I said, okay. So they ran my card, and they said, okay, you're good. And then I checked later at home, it was $393. So, I mean, he said $360 on the phone, but I guess there was admin fees or some other taxes or something, but it was just like a total robbery. They just fleeced me. And so then I got the old truck back, drove back here to the house, and then my motorbike was still stuck there at the restaurant, which that bike has got me out of trouble so many times, and so then I had to take the bus to go get my bike back, and then I brought that back home, and finally today's ordeal was over. Well, I just realized this is already 24 minutes. I'm talking way too long, but it's a long story, so So then when I was there waiting, I looked at the paperwork when I was waiting for the tow truck driver, and it says here that it's a misdemeanor. And I was like, well, I don't even know what a misdemeanor is, you know? I was just kind of glad I didn't say felony, you know? And then I was like, why isn't there a price on here? And then I looked at the paperwork, and it says, the defendant is hereby given notice to appear in Davis County Justice Court in Farmington. And I was like, appear in court? And then I looked up what a misdemeanor was, and it said it's like medium serious. And then I looked up, or Googled what in this county and the state and everything, what the penalty is for driving without a license. And it can be 6 months in jail or $1,000 fine. I was like, holy smokes. I can't believe I've gotten myself into this mess, you know? And then, but I did, you know? And so the reason I got myself into this mess was because, and then I had already played out in my head, for some reason, I imagined getting pulled over for the not having the insurance. And I pictured the cop coming to my window and me just being honest. And then, but I had no idea. I thought it would just be like a ticket or something, you know. But even then, I didn't quit everything and call State Farm and get it straightened out. I just kind of kept procrastinating. It wasn't even for the money. It was just all the phone calling, the waiting, you know, that kind of stuff that I just was having a hard time facing. I've never liked doing that kind of stuff. And so, that being so stupid, I really got myself hammered for that. It was just so stupid, you know. But, I mean, in a way, I could say if we dialed it back, it started as a financial problem. Back when I was unemployed, my unemployment ran out. I really didn't have an extra $30 even for the insurance. So, it started with a financial hardship. But then that bled over to me being irresponsible and not, I don't know why adulting seems like, because I feel like this is like the mistake that you make when you're like 16 or 18 or something, you know. So you know, things were really just starting to go good for me too. The new job's really working out good. I like my coworkers. I like my boss. I've gotten one paycheck that was for a week's work, and I'm just coming up on what would have been my first full paycheck. And it's weird because it's Pioneer Day tomorrow, which is like a Utah holiday, and so we don't have work. But so I'll be missing work tomorrow, and I missed work today. And that was their thing about the tow company. They were going to be closed the whole weekend. So if that had happened, the impound bill would have been through the roof, you know. And so, well, now that this video is already 28 minutes long, I feel like I should just finish what else I was going to say, and that is that I feel like I was able to stay remarkably calm, and that I actually handled all these obstacles and jumping through all these hoops really good today. So despite how I got myself into this mess, I was sort of proud of myself for pulling it all together. And then I learned that, wow, my coworkers are super cool. They both offered to help me today. And then I called my boss and apologized to him for missing the day of work. And he was really cool. I could tell he appreciated the phone call. And, you know, I just apologized. I said, I'm sorry I missed work today. And it was really stupid of me and irresponsible to not pay my insurance, you know. But, wow, what a day, man. Just such a horrible day. And I'm gonna do it. I want to do another video about why I feel like I was able to handle it without falling apart today. A couple times I wanted to cry today, but I didn't. And now I've kind of calmed down. I feel like I've gone through some stages of grief, you know, or like angry at myself, angry at the cop, and then, you know, sort of like denial, you know, mostly just because of money and the lost time and everything, you know. But well, I think I better wind her up here before I get right to 30 minutes. Thanks for listening to me.